So today I have got Sarah who's joining us. Sarah is an ex-local authority SEMH, which stands for Social Emotional Mental Health Advisor, who left the education system in July and is also a parent to 3 children. Thank you for joining us, Sarah.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be here.
Can I start off by asking you maybe just to tell us a little bit about yourself, both professionally and personally?
So as you said, 3 neurodivergent children, and I worked in education for 25 years, starting off as a TA in a SEN school in Broadwater Farm, then track on. I was a teacher for 15 years. My last post was working for a local authority, as you said, as a SEMH advisor, so coordinating training on trauma, advising teachers and doing direct work with pupils as well. So
am I right in believing that you were the assistant head there?
Yeah, his assistant head of service. Yeah, so that was my last post when I left. I left at the end of August, but obviously worked till July, and just got to a point where I couldn't take the system anymore. I couldn't take what we were doing to children.
If you had to just name the top reason that you decided to leave education?
I think the top thing is that we are breaking children. The system's not fit for purpose. We know how children learn and develop, and yet we're not working in that way. It was just before the Easter holidays when I decided to hand in my notice. And I had 5 children at risk of permanent exclusion. And because they were neurodivergent and in a system that just was trying to force them to be round pegs, essentially.
And personally, you are neurodivergent yourself as well, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct.
You mentioned you've got 3 neurodivergent children.
Yeah.
And one of the other reasons I reached out to you was I was discussing with you about how one of the things I'm really wanting to do is to try and uphold lots of different neurodivergent experiences and looking into things like marginalised communities and ethnic minorities. And that I was finding it incredibly difficult to connect with people from different backgrounds. And you are mother to 3 mixed race children as well. And you said to me about actually, obviously, you feel funny talking as a white woman on behalf of them, but you can certainly talk about some of their experiences.
Absolutely.
As I continue to try and find those minority voices. So I'm really grateful for that. Do you feel that your children's journey to sort of diagnoses and to being supported was different in any way?
Absolutely, particularly with my middle son. He was very much seen through a behaviour lens. He was that naughty boy who was just naughty because he was naughty, and that curiosity was really lost. And you could see, and particularly as he got bigger as well, that kind of then translates into a big scary black man. So he would face things like, when he was in specialist schools, actual violence with PAs throwing him on the floor to kind of take a phone away from him, and just extra adversity and traumatic experiences that some of his peers may not have faced. And just getting any kind of support as well, I felt was very much reactive as opposed to proactive. I was constantly saying we need support, and that started from a very early age. Really struggled with that transition from reception into year 1, which now as a professional I see is so commonly little boys who are neurodivergent or just movement seeking in general, and then they go from play-based learning into formalised learning so quickly. And again, a stage where the system really isn't set up to meet the needs of the children that they are receiving. And he would say to me, I just don't understand what I'm meant to do when I get off the carpets. And it was very much his behaviour as opposed to what's going on for him. And at that stage, I hadn't learned about trauma-informed practice. I wasn't looking at it with curiosity myself. I was looking at it with shame. Oh my goodness, I failed. My child's not doing well in school. I had that pain of understanding his experience. As I said, I myself am dyslexic, so I felt that difficulty when I was in school in terms of the shame that you feel of I'm not keeping up, I don't understand what I'm meant to be doing. I was very compliant based, which girls often are, they response, and I was all lovely and kind of cried, particularly in primary school. But he was an angry little boy who was screaming out for help, and that was seen, particularly as he got older, an angry black boy. See professionally as that black boys in particular are more likely to be seen as permanent exclusion, what's going on behaviourally for them, as opposed to always there an underlying neurodivergence.
Right.
Could be going on for this child. As I think about, we know that there's racism, for example, in the police force. It's well documented, it's well understood. We know that there is systemic racism in the NHS, and it would be foolish of us not to think that it is in the education system. It's a predominantly white workforce. Statistics are there. Black Caribbean boys are 2 times more likely than white children to be permanently excluded. And then add on top of that, SEND, if it's 5 times more likely to be permanently excluded. Those are ridiculous statistics that it doesn't need to be that way.
Well, I know for myself, even when I was looking at diagnosis statistics, and we talk about sort of underdiagnosis, but when you take into account ethnic minorities and all the other stuff, diagnosis rates are even lower
Absolutely. And getting that support, it was so difficult for him. It was, as I said, constantly a behaviour lens. So then it ended up, he got an EHCP when he was in year 6. It was far too late at that point.
Yeah.
Support had really been missed. But then it was kind of moving into a specialist provision. You're more likely to be targeted by gangs. Gangs are amazing at attachment theory, much better than we are in education.
Well,
And yeah.
sorry to interrupt. I was going to ask, what do you feel that sort of being neurodivergent and not being particularly well supported within the education system led to mental health difficulties for your own children?
Oh, absolutely. There's a proverb, I think it's an African proverb, that says a child that's not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And I see
Oh,
evidence of that everywhere. The knife crime epidemic that we've got going on is children who are pushed out of
yeah.
society. They are not held within that village. They are not supported.
So, as long as you're comfortable, would you mind sharing your own personal experience? And then afterwards, I'll ask you about professionally what you've seen, because I'm aware that you and your son have not had an easy time.
It's been really difficult. He went into specialist SEMH provision. At that point, he started going down the wrong road. And I do feel like give a dog a name and he will answer to it. It was, I'm not a good child, I'm bad, and really started taking up that narrative and getting to the point where support wasn't available. I was crying out for support. I was saying he's not okay. There was no diagnosis. At this point, there was literally no support from
Yeah.
anybody. And it got to the point where he did become involved in gangs. And at one point I had 10 masked boys with machete at my doorstep at 6 o'clock on a Sunday evening with my daughter upstairs, just got out the shower.
Wow.
The boys holding the door shut, trying to keep it shut while they were trying to boot their way into the house. So, and then which led to him going into the care system, because obviously safeguarding my daughter was equally as important as safeguarding him. I felt scared for him to be in the area, and it was so reactive. I'd been saying, he's not okay, we're not okay, we need
Yeah.
support. And if they'd been proactive with that support, I think a lot of this could have been avoided.
I'm
And
so sorry to hear that, Sarah. I can't even begin to imagine how difficult that must have been. Words don't even do it justice.
it's been a lot, and it's, you carry a lot of shame with that, because the narrative is it's the parents' fault. These boys
Yeah.
that get into crime, it's the parents. And I felt like it felt very unfair because I'd been advocating for such a long time for support and really trying to get him the support that he
And
needed.
and working in the system as well.
Exactly, and working in the system, absolutely. And that brings its own shame. You're working in the system and your child's going down this route that you
Yeah.
don't really have any control of, and you're doing your best to try and get them the support. And it just wasn't the support. Even when you do get support, it's ineffective and it's not helpful. And then he now is so mistrusting of professionals. Like, his
I'm not
experience has been
surprised.
so traumatizing. And again, racism within the system. He got moved into a care home in Cumbria. They were directly racist to him. And then he was away from me without, I was the secure base for him. I was the
Yeah.
one place where he did feel safe and could be okay. So he was away from me. He was trying to hang himself. It was really difficult. So the mental health needs really spiraled at that point, again, because of that disconnection from his one safe space.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Mustn't be easy for you. It
Thank
just
you.
really sort of shows that even as a professional working in the field, having some of the knowledge, being a decent human being, if the support's not there, what these systems are doing to people and how difficult it is to get the right support.
And
On a professional level, how have you seen the interventions used in schools, or children not getting the appropriate support or not getting the diagnosis or their needs assessed appropriately? How have you seen that impact children's mental well-being?
there's massive shame that comes with that, and it's a drip effect, and it really corrodes a child's identity and a sense of self and self-esteem. So what you find is you've got anxious, depressed children whose nervous systems are constantly alert and are in fight response and are angry, and their camps is overrun. They've got 4-year waiting lists to see children. That's a sign that our system is not working and our children are not okay. And what we are doing is compounding that and making them less okay. We're making them.
You know, trying to get into CAMS is just literally, is your child about to take their life now?
Exactly, absolutely. And even then, when you get the support, just it's not always great. The advice that I was given was very punitive in terms of how I should respond to my son. So as a professional, I was still kind of very much in that. I was a mainstream teacher at that point. So I was like, yes, that's how I'll respond. I will take away his PlayStation. I will take away football. And thinking that I was doing the right thing. And
I was saying to my husband the other day, because we were starting to look for a sort of new school for my daughter who has to move from specialist in the next couple of years. And he said, how do you know if they're good schools? And I said, the first thing I do is I read the behaviour policy.
Exactly,
And
absolutely.
if it mentions things like positive behaviour support rewards, that and the other, and
Some sanctions.
it's not looking at actually meeting the need, adapting the environment.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that children don't also need other support and they don't need to grow. But if the main support is about discipline and punishment and not understanding need, that's not a school for our child.
Exactly.
I think I said to you earlier, I don't have a behaviour policy with my children. I have a relationship policy with them.
Exactly.
Because relationships teach more than consequences ever could.
And that was one of the biggest things that I was trying to help teachers to understand in my work with when I was doing consultancy work is relationship absolutely comes first. Build that relationship and everything else will flourish. And within that doesn't mean that we're not boundaried. Yes, we can be boundaried, but we can be boundaried with love. We can be boundaried with care. You know, so many schools are still in that very punitive sanctions and rewards. Oh, we've given them a sticker chart and they're still not behaving. And it's like, well, what about the relationship? Where's the warmth here? Where's the joy? Where's the connection?
One of my children, the one that's in a specialist school now, is doing so much better. It should not have had to have been that hard to get the support. But I remember before she moved and she was in mainstream, and the school turning around to me and saying to me that the main issue was she was too attached to me. And I remember saying, because thankfully it was my third child and I was at a place I could advocate for myself, and I came around and I said, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what it is I'm doing that you're not.
Exactly.
So as a parent and as somebody who's worked in education, if you could wave a magic wand and implement 2 changes tomorrow, what would they be?
Oh, that's a good question. I would like for us to teach how we know that children learn, so much more movement and fun. I'd really like for the adults to approach children with curiosity and a relationship first approach. Whenever I deliver training, I always say, if there's one thing that you can take away from this, please let it be curiosity. Please let's start looking at our young people through a lens of curiosity. What could be going on for them and how can we support them to do better, as opposed to why are they a little brat and get them out of my classroom.
If I could ask you, if you could leave a message or one thing with, like, first of all, parents, and then other teachers or people who work in education, what would those messages be? So if it was to a parent, first of all.
I think for a parent, look after yourself first. I think that's really difficult, particularly as a parent of neurodivergent children. We don't look after ourselves and we are stretched so thin that we are no good to anybody. So really looking after yourself and knowing that it is hard. And the only way that you can get through those difficulties is by taking really good care of yourself in order to be able to look after your children and do well for them. For professionals, as I said, it comes back to curiosity. Please look at these children with curiosity. Address your biases. We all have them. And I think if we really look at those biases and think, okay, well, where can I be doing better? Where can you bring joy into your day with the kids that you work with? For professionals, looking after yourself, because if you're okay, you can bring those moments of joy and you can bring those moments of play in. But if you're not doing okay, that's going to show in the work that we do with our children. Don't be ashamed to buck the trends and to say, actually, no, I'm not just going to punish my child for their neurodivergence.
I had a social care family practitioner tell me that my approach was too therapeutic with my children.
I've heard that so many times.
And I had great joy in writing a very detailed email giving her links to the PDA Society. It was one of my better emails and I did quite enjoy doing it. But I was just like, who are you to come in my house and make judgment? You've met me for 2 minutes. And I understand that you have been given this information about star charts and that and the other. That doesn't work for children who have got demand avoidance, whose nervous systems are dysregulated. I've worked in mental health for 20 years. And you have the audacity to come into my house and tell me I'm too therapeutic. I mean, I'm a pretty resilient person who can advocate for myself. But what about that poor person that actually to them that is going to be the end of the world, or they are going to follow that advice?
Too many professionals actually don't know what they're talking, you know, like particularly the social care, and I don't want to slander anybody, but you get so much advice from social care about rewards and punishments. And again, in the education system, you know, we're the professionals, but we don't actually have this knowledge of how children learn and develop and what actually is good for them. And it's really frustrating because actually in science, we do have this knowledge, and teachers, you know, I was fortunate because I went down the kind of early years path and I'd had a background in psychology, so I had some understanding of child development, but teachers actually don't get taught about child development. So they are within a structure and within a system doing what they're meant to be doing because that's what they're told to be doing, but it's a disservice to the children because actually what you're doing goes against what we know is right for children. We're not guessing anymore, we know, and yet we are still doing a disservice to them. We are still trying to make them conform and fit in little boxes and you know, do their SATs and make progress, and those teachers are judged on that progress. They're not judged on how harmoniously their class works together, on what social skills these children have developed, how well these children can communicate with one another. They're not judged on that. They are judged on how well, you know, do they know their prefrontal adverbials, how well do they know all of this stuff that actually really doesn't matter to the true development of a child, you know.
Very briefly, just tell me what you're up to next.
So I've recently launched Raise Your Village, which is a wellbeing, education and healing hub. So it's very much about being able to support parents. That connection is the most healing thing, healing and learning in connection. So all of the things that I wish I'd had at different points in my life, as a parent, as a, you know, as a person healing from trauma.
And where can people find out about it? Is it online?
Yep, I'm online. I've got a website, www.raiseyourvillage.co.uk.
I will be watching your progress closely, and thank you so much for coming and speaking to me today.
Thank you. Take care, Jodie. Thanks.